Hi, John. I finally got your images, so let's take a look at what you did. And I want to begin by encouraging you to use DxO Photo Lab. And let's go ahead and open Photo Lab. And as I do that, I'll show you why I think you should use this program as much as you possibly can for your raw conversions. I'm going to go ahead and open the program. It does take a while to load because it's a rather large program. I'll just jump ahead here so you don't have to sit through this excruciating process. Okay, now that we've got it open, I'm going to navigate over here to your images that I did download, and let's go ahead and navigate. Now, you'll notice over here on your left, you'll see a directory structure. Now, you don't recognize my directory structure, obviously, but when you install it on your computer, you'll notice that your directory structure is reflected exactly the way you know it and that you're familiar with. And that's one of the great things. You don't have to deal with catalogs and sessions and all of that stuff. It's just very, very straightforward. And I think the easier the better. So I'm going to navigate down here to where I put your images. Now these are the two images, and as we look at these, the one thing I would like to do is come up here to the DxO modules. I'm going to click on this and download missing modules. Now, I looked at these images before, and these were shot with the 850, with the Nikon D850. And we're going to go to Nikon, and we're going to come down to the Nikon D850. Right there. And we're going to go to the 24 to 70. Let's see where it is. I think this is the one right here. Yes, I already have it installed as I was looking at it before. But the point is that these little modules on DxO are unbelievably helpful in getting your image to look as good as it possibly can. Let me show you how that works. And I don't want to belabor this point, but it is one of the primary reasons that we use DxO. Now, here's your image right here in the workspace, and I'm going to come down to an area that is going to reflect the existence of that module, and it's right here under Detail, Lens Sharpness. Now, this only becomes live if you have the module installed. Let's disconnect the module and watch what happens to the image when we don't have it installed. In fact, I should come up here. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to remove the module and watch what happens to your image. See how the pincushion distortion popped in right there? And also we lost access to this lens sharpness area. And this is not typical sharpening. In fact, let me go ahead and go to 100% magnification on this, and you'll see the image. Now, let's go back and reinstall the module. And we see here where it downloads very, very quickly. There it is. It's installed. And look at the difference in the image. At least I can see it. Let's go ahead and move this back over here. And I disconnect the sharpness, and you can see the difference in the sharpening. It's not really that obvious, but trust me when I tell you, if you print your images, you will notice a difference. Let's go to another area, try it again. I can see it here on my screen. You might not be able to see it on the video, but I definitely see it on the screen that I am looking at. So let's go back to 100% on this, and I'm going to begin every treatment that I do in DxO. So let's take a look at your images and take a look at what you did right on these two. And the immediate thing I see is that you did a great job on getting your horizon straight. And the reason that's important, because if you have to straighten the horizon in software, you reduce the resolution of the image. Inevitably, you're going to crop the image, which throws away resolution. So you're maintaining your 40 megapixel resolution on this image. And in the next one, the same thing. You did a great job on getting your horizon straight. The composition is very, very good, as I mentioned on the Fred Miranda post. And you did that part really well as in this image. A slight move to the right was very good on this to maintain. I'm assuming what you wanted to do is maintain coverage of the water, because if you move this area here to the left, you'll probably get beach and sand and whatever it is, whatever else it was that you were trying to avoid. So very good on that. Now, as I look up here in the EXIF information, I'm seeing that you shot this at ISO 800 at f16, 1/200th of a second. And I'm guessing the reason you did that is because you wanted to freeze the action of the waves in the ocean. To go to 800 ISO allowed you to drop this to f16, which gave you a very, very wide depth of field. And I'm going to make the assumption that that's why you did that. However, that does introduce noise into your image. And if we navigate to a dark area, now I will say the 850 is very, very good with noise, but any camera shot at 800 is going to have noise. End of story. There's no getting around it. I'm going to take off this chromatic aberration because we don't need it. And we're going to navigate to the noise area right here. And let's take that noise reduction off and take a look at the image. And I don't see, at least not noise that's obvious, but I'll guarantee you it's there. Yes, I do. I'm starting to see it right here in this area right here. And one of the great things about DxO is this noise reduction capability. And I would go to prime. Now, your noise problem is not really that bad, so I'm going to bring down these sliders right here. The default noise reduction function is a little bit heavy-handed, so I always bring this down somewhat, especially when you're only dealing with 800 ISO on the Nikon D850. You're not going to have a lot, but we do need to get rid of some of it. So we've got that adjustment made. Let's go back to 100% view on this image and take a look. And basically, you did a real good job. There's not a whole lot that needs to be done, except I am going to make a copy of this image, Control D, and you'll see down here in the lower left-hand corner, you can see where it did make a copy. Now, on one copy, I'm going to boost the vibrancy. Anytime you want to do color, increase the saturation, try the vibrancy slider first, and I always bump it up to about plus 50. That's a good place to start. And I think you can see the difference. Here's 0 basically, and then right at about 50, you can see that the vibrancy really made the image pop. Now, if you do just saturation, it boosts every level of color exactly the same, which is not what you want. So you boost up to 50. If you still feel like that you don't have enough boost in your color, then come back to saturation and go maybe plus 10, plus 15, and that combination of adjustments should give you the boost in color that you're looking for. Now, the one thing I would notice on this is that it has a very blue-white balance. So let's go ahead and just experiment. I'm not necessarily going to change it to any preordained adjustment. Let's just look and see what the image looks like when we adjust the white balance. So I'm going to click on the color picker, and let's go ahead and just click on a white area. Now look at how that golden light is accentuated when we make this adjustment. And it's just a matter of taste as to how far down that road you want to go. So it's completely your call, but I would say right there. And that does boost, or in my mind, enhances the tone of this image as obviously a late afternoon shot. So I like that color adjustment. I'm going to go ahead and keep that. And I think one thing you had done that I didn't particularly agree with, I know it's all subjective. Trust me when I tell you it's all subjective, is you brightened this water considerably, and I really don't think you need to do that. You've got this really cool reflection right here. Let me get my pointer back. You've got this really cool reflection right here, and I just don't think you need to brighten anything else. I think keeping it dark natively, the way it came out of the camera, is a very good thing. Now, again, let's experiment on the highlights, because I think there's some things we can do up here to give you a little bit more drama in the sunset area. We only care about what this looks like. Now I'm going to go back to the first iteration, and I'm going to try to match the adjustment that we made. There we go, on the water, and that's very, very close. Close enough for government work, as we like to say. And I'm going to take this image, and I'm going to darken this highlight area. I think it isolates the sun just a little bit better. But if we look at these two images, then this is the ocean as you shot it, which I like. And if we darken this area right here, I think it brings out a little more detail in the sky. So let's go ahead and keep that. Let's come down. Your noise reduction is done. We're not going to do any crop, so I'll take that off. The lens sharpness, we just let that be default. I very rarely adjust these unless something is wrong with the image. And in this case, you don't have that problem. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that. Now, this color rendering is a slight adjustment based on your specific sensor that exists in your camera. So let's go ahead and click on camera body, and I'm going to choose the Nikon D850. Where is it? Where is it? There it is right there. Now watch how the image changes when I make that selection. Basically goes back to the way it was. Sometimes it makes a marked adjustment, other times it doesn't. So let's see, distortion. That's another thing that's very good about these modules. Now here's before. See the change in the pincushion distortion? After. It's not huge in this image. Let's try this image and see if we get something different. Yeah, see that? See how the image changes? And that's all a function of the DxO module. These modules are little bitty programs that adjust based on the specific lens-body combination that you're using on the image. So we're going to work on this one first. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else we need to do. I don't see anything that's glaringly obvious, but we are going to take this image and combine it with this one. And as I look at this, it is just a little bit oversaturated. So what I'm going to do is come back up here and bring down this saturation. I'm going to leave the vibrancy the way it was. I'm going to bring down the saturation. Sometimes less is more in this regard. So I'm going to take that. And the noise reduction, now we always choose the prime. That's the best results, always, always. This is if you have something quick and dirty that really doesn't matter, but you're working on a nice landscape shot, you always want to choose the prime noise reduction algorithm in DxO Photo Lab. So let's come down. Everything else looks good. Now let me direct your attention down here to where it says the Nik collection. You may be familiar with Nik software. Now, as you know, DxO bought Nik software and is now including it in DxO Photo Lab. If you buy, in other words, I guess I misstated that. If you buy the Nik collection, you can install it in DxO Photo Lab, which is a very, very good thing because you can add special effects to the image within DxO, so that if you, let's say, do an HDR preset, that'll boost your noise in the dark areas, and then you have the ability within DxO to adjust that noise. DxO has the best noise reduction algorithm on planet Earth, without a doubt. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. And again, these are all experiments. I'm going to come up to Color Effects Pro. This is what I use most of all. But you can see the entire Nik collection is included in there. And what it's doing right here, it's making a copy image based on these adjustments. That's the way I have it set up. I don't want to adjust the existing image. I want it to make a copy and then do that adjustment, because if I don't like it, then I haven't done anything to the first image. Again, this is a very, very slow process because I have the prime noise reduction algorithm chosen, and anytime you do prime noise reduction, it does take a long time, but the results are worth the wait. So let's go ahead and fast forward in the video to the conclusion of the transformation. All right, we're completed, and it automatically loads the image into Color Effects Pro, and let's let that process conclude. You have some large files here. So let's see. All right, now as you can see, we have this before and after slider. And that's the default adjustment. Now we're only going to pay attention to this. Don't worry about what it does up here. I'm not doing this adjustment for this area. I'm doing it for this area down here. So let's play a little bit with this and see what we can do. And I want to increase the contrast. And I may not like it. I may just bail out of this entire process, and I don't think I like it. It's just too busy. There's no reason to see that right there. It's just, it's too busy. This is subtle, natural. This is a function of light. This image is a photograph of the different ways that late afternoon light can play on your subject matter. We don't need to do any huge adjustments to the contrast in the water. It really kind of takes away from the image. So again, less is more. We don't want it. We looked at it. We experimented with it. We decided we didn't like it, so let's go ahead and cancel it and move on. Now let's take the next image and click on it. And I'm going to do the exact same things to this image. I'm going to come down, get the color picker, and I'm going to come over here and warm this image up right there. There you go. The first time was wonderful. All right, sometimes you get lucky. All right, and then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to boost the vibrancy up to about 50. See how that works? Let's play around, experiment with the highlight slider, see if we can improve on that sky, which, yeah, a little bit, just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and return this to 0, and then I'm going to hit Command or Control D to make a duplicate. And now I'm going to take that highlight slider and come down and do the midtones so that you have a gradual adjustment. It's not sharp in one little luminance area of the image. And again, let's take this to the Nick collection, load it, see what happens. And again, it takes a while to generate, so I'm going to go ahead and advance through to the end of the process. All right, we got it loaded, and we're loading Color Effects Pro. Let's take a look at what we've got, see how this image is going to look. And we may decide that we like the adjustment on this image, maybe not on the last one, but it might work on this one. And again, it's all subjective. I think it's a little heavy-handed on the sky, but I'm looking at it here. I want it to affect this area right here. And again, I don't like it, so let's go ahead and cancel out of it. Now, what do we want to do here to boost the situation? Now, we have copies, so we can work on different areas of the image. Now, let's go ahead and increase the saturation. We boosted the vibrancy up to 50. I'm going to take this up just a little bit more. Now I'm going to boost the saturation, and I only care about what's happening with the water here. Okay. And let's look at this one versus this one. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to boost the intensity of this reflection right here. So we've done all the adjustments, and I'll work on the sky in Photoshop. You may use Lightroom, but I use Photoshop. So let's go ahead and come down, and I'll hold down the Command key on my Mac, click on this image, this one, and this one. Very important step here. Export to disk. The settings on this export process is extremely important, especially on these images that have subtle colors, very, very muted colors here that run the gamut in intensity, and you want to capture that as much as you possibly can. The only way to do that, you want 16-bit TIFF, uncompressed. See that? Full size, no compression, 16-bit. Now, these aren't 16-bit images, they're 14-bit, but they're in a 16-bit environment, which means that everything that sensor picked up in the way of light is now being transmitted into the image. I'm going to put them in this folder, and then look down here. I'm doing these in the Pro Photo RGB color space. Always, always, always convert your raw images into a full-size, uncompressed TIFF in the Pro Photo RGB color space. So let's go ahead and do that now, and we'll come back as soon as this conversion is completed. All right, we've got these converted. I now have them open in Photoshop, and let's look up here. This is this image, and this is this image. And what I want to do is I want to take the two images that we adjusted in Photolab and put them in the same layer stack. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. We're going to click on the tab for this image, pull it down, take it off the dock, as we say, move it over. Go get the Move tool, put the Move tool inside the floating image, hold down the Shift key, left click, drag it over, and drop it. And as we go to our Layers tab in the lower right-hand corner of the workspace, we see that we have two images in the same layer stack right here, and that's what we want. Now we're going to work on the sky separately from the water. And I think one thing that I want to do as I look at these two is I'm going to duplicate the background layer and then reposition these layers, and I want the brighter image below the darker image. That's just how I work. You may want to do it differently, but this is how I work. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the top layer, put on a mask, and again, this is some experimentation. Go get the brush, and I've got opacity at 100%, flow at 100%, and smoothing at 100%. I also have the maximum feathering on the brush. So what I want to do is I want to affect this area right here. And we're going to experiment. Everything is an experimentation, okay? So what I'm going to do is come to Image, Adjustments, Vibrance. I'm going to hit that with a 50 adjustment, plus 50 on that. There you go, just like that. Now let's see what saturation does, and I'll bet it's going to be too much, and it is. Just that plus 12 adjustment, it just makes it too much. So we'll pull it down to maybe no more than plus 5, and I think that's all we need. Let's go ahead and hit OK on that because we want to keep it. Now what I want to do is come up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and I only use Adobe Camera Raw as a filter within Photoshop. I never do my conversions with Adobe Camera Raw because the adjustments just are not that good. And what I want to do is increase the dramatic impact of this reflection area right here. And we take the clarity slider and we punch it over. Don't worry what it's doing with the rest of the image. Only concentrate on this area right here. So I'll take this and make this adjustment right there. And I think that's probably all we need. Let's see what dehaze does. Well, that's okay too. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And we'll go ahead and keep those adjustments. And you can see what it did over here. And in fact, it's a little out of balance. So I'm going to bring this area in here. And kick this area up here. And then I'm going to reduce the flow down to about 5% and blend it. Just blend this area a little bit better. Not completely, just so that you don't have that abrupt border between the two areas. All right. Let's see what we got. See how horrible that looks? Now let's go ahead and flatten this image. We'll do a little more experimentation. And actually, as I look at this, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to bring this in, I think, a little better than I had before. We're still at 5%, still on the mask. Let's bring this in because it just looks, we need to add a little more saturation to this area right here because it's a little bit, how can I put it? This does not match this area. So I'm going to just play with this, bring it over just like that, and I think that's better. Just that little adjustment. Doesn't need much. Go ahead and flatten the image. Now I'm going to establish another set of copy layers. And this time I'm going to work on the sky. And I think what I want to do is come up to Image, Adjustments, and again, experimentation. We're just experimenting with different things to see what happens. I like that, just that slight adjustment to the exposure in the sky. And how does that look before and after? before and after. All right, so we're going to go ahead and keep that darker sky. I'm going to put a mask. Go get the brush, and this time I'm going to run this flow all the way to 100% and then come through, and we're going to bring back our previous water area and try not to get up into the sky. And I'm a big proponent of less is more. We have done very little to the sky other than adjust the exposure, and I like that. But I think also what we need to do is bring down the saturation ever so slightly because it just doesn't look natural. I'm going to bring down the saturation. There you go. Just that little bit. -6 just gave it that perfect adjustment. So there we have it. This image is finished. Voila. I do like it. Let's go to the next image. And again, we're going to take these two, and I'm going to pull this one down. Go get the move tool, put it inside the floating image, hold down the shift key, left click, drag it over, and it was supposed to have plopped in. Oh, there it goes. Okay, it's still crunching. So now, again, in the layers, we have the first image and the second image. And what I'm going to work on is this reflection area right here. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get a copy. I'm going to take this brighter image and pull it down underneath the darker image. There's no right or wrong way to do that. It's just the way I work. So we're going to take this background image and again compare. I like the sky a lot better here. Let's go ahead and just reduce the saturation again, like we did in the previous one. Just that. That's all you need. It's all you need. And again, one more time, this is all subjective. You may think differently, but this is what I would do to increase the dramatic impact. Okay, now come down to layer 2. Now we can boost, since we adjusted the luminosity of that area, now we can adjust the saturation to compensate. There we go. Punched it way up. May have to bring the saturation just 6 right there, no more. You don't want to oversaturate it. Take that right there. And let's go ahead and flatten the image because I think this part here is done. And we're going to, again, we've done this 3 times, the third time, so we're going to make 2 copy layers. And I'm going to choose the middle layer, disconnect the top, and I'm going to bring the luminosity of this top area here down a little more because it's still a little bit too bright. So let's go to curves. Yeah, I like that better. Now, you may like that adjustment on this entire image just like that. It's completely subjective. I mean, if you get 10 people in a room and you can get 10 different interpretations of how to do this image, but this is just what I would do. All right, so let's go ahead and pull it across. Just like that. Now we got it. Now we got it. Now let's just experiment with a little further adjustment and darkening that top area. We're not brightening the bottom, we're just darkening the top. Ooh, I like that. It's a little better. Now, as we darken these areas, you'll notice the colors become a little more intense, and so you have to compensate by adjusting the saturation, because again, you don't want it to be too much. So take it down to 5. There you go. That's perfection. That is an image right there. I think we're done. So let's go ahead and flatten this. Voila. It's my subjective interpretation of this image. I think your center of emotion is right here. Everything else complements, everything else complements this central area right here. And that's why we spent so much time on it, because it's reflecting this light. This whole linear area right here is the center of the dramatic impact of the image. You've got better delineation on the sun right there. Clouds look good, the sky looks good, but this right here, that's the emotional impact of the image right there. And again, I think you're just ever so slightly off on your horizon. I mean, just infinitesimally. So let's take a look and see. Yeah, just about the same as the other one. That tells me you're on a tripod. So good job there. All right. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, maybe a different perspective on how to process your images in the future. But less is more. I guess that's the end of the lesson is anytime you do this stuff in Photoshop, less is more. Good luck and keep shooting.